This broadly is the agenda for today's webinar. Broadly we will be covering these four areas in terms of going through the evolution in EPC space that has happened over the last few decades, the typical trends that are happening in the space, as well as the challenges that confront the EPC industry. We would also briefly talk about Ramco's EPC solution capabilities and our offerings in this space, and we would also share a couple of case studies. So from an evolution perspective, the EPC industry has been continuously evolving over the last few decades. A lot of changes have happened both on the business front as well as on the technology front as well. Technology has made rapid strides. Not only has technology made such rapid strides, but some of these technologies have been very, very disruptive in nature as well, like a cloud or a mobility. The core business models in this industry has been changing. This is something similar to what has been happening in the other industry space as well. For example, like in manufacturing, where contract manufacturing has taken off in a big way, automotive industry where subcontracting has taken off in a big way. So EPC industry is also not immune to these changes, and we see that business models in this industry has also been changing. They also grapple with the typical issues of over inventory as well as under inventory as well. We have seen emergence of new players, not only emergence of new players in this space, but also the established players as well as the global players have started spreading their wings. So this has posed newer challenges to this already established players. Today the world has become almost boundaryless or borderless to do businesses. The business environments have become more conducive. So you see this, these players coming in and completely trying to change the game of EPC businesses. How has it evolved over the last few decades? Typically, if you look at the mid 80s, which was pre outsourcing era, most of this EPC industry, there was not much of outsourcing that was happening in this industry. EPC plus project management, most of it, almost 100% of it was managed by the customer themselves. This means that they had to have core skills in all the areas of EPC, including the project management, as well as the necessary skills to do the implementation. All of this rested with the business owner. This means that the bandwidth needs, the skill, the expertise needs in this area was tremendous, and many of the players in this industry was lacking in some of these areas. This meant that they were definitely project and budget overruns. To add to this, IT was also not very prevalent during this era. So there was not enough back-end support system for them to closely monitor the cost and schedule overruns of this project. A decade down the line, what was happening was that similar to the changes that was happening in the other industry segment, also outsourcing started taking off in a small way. This meant that EPC industry was also not immune to these changes, and they also started adopting some of these outsourcing techniques that was happening in this space. They could selectively pick and outsource some of the areas like the engineering part of it as well as the procurement part of it, while they still kept the core construction and project management with themselves. When they were able to outsource the procurement part of it, it means that they were able to have complete control over the bill of materials or the bill of quantities or the schedule of quantities that needs to be outsourced from a procurement perspective. And from an engineering perspective, the front end engineering design, which is typically called feed in this industry parlance, and the detail engineering aspects were outsourced. This meant that the bandwidth needs were much less on the client themselves. This would also mean that the more focus on construction and project management helped in better control over the projects, and this also helped the clients to reduce the cost and schedule overruns. What was happening is, while we see that there was a shift in the business models and the outsourcing models that was happening, the risk factor was still a major factor, and most of the risks were continued to be handled by the client themselves. moving forward in the era of early 2000s, with the advent of strong IT as the backbone supporting most of these projects, and with the ERP taking off in a big way globally, the total outsourcing, or the concept of lump sum and turnkey outsourcing, started taking place. And most of these players started outsourcing not only the engineering and procurement aspects, but also giving the complete project on a turnkey basis to their own vendors, who in turn were either able to do it themselves, or some of these contractors brought in some subcontractors as well. So this helped the client to focus on their core business. And this also started that IT started providing them the required ammunition to manage their businesses in a more effective and a more better way. From a risk perspective, what was happening is, though there was a shift in terms of the risk, the client continued to start sharing the risk in a major way still. The complete risk outsourcing did not happen from an overall perspective. But from 2015 onwards, what we have seen is that while this trend of lump sum and turnkey projects continued, the risks were started sharing by all the players in the ecosystem. It was no longer who the client who carried the complete risks, but also you say that the engineering player, or the design player, or the procurement player also started taking risks on their area of expertise, or on their span of control, which they were involved in this whole program. And IT has started coming in a big way. So with the 2015, we also saw that IT taking off in a bigger way, with a lot of the digitalization of the business aspects coming in. From a growth perspective, typically if you look at the market, you could probably categorize it into two categories. One is the advanced, or the mature, or the developed economies, where the infrastructure, most of the infrastructure is already in place. The other aspect is more the emerging or the developing economies. From an developed economies per se, the aging infrastructure offered businesses in mainly two areas. One is the maintenance, the other one is the rebuilding of the aging infrastructure. While in emerging economies, the infra boom has started taking off in a big way. So typically you are expecting in the construction industry to grow to 12 trillion in 2020. This means you are looking at an CAGR of 4% every year raise. Most of the governments are also started trying to get into the infrastructure and boost infrastructure in a big way. For example, like the smart cities in India, that is going to take off in a big way. So that means there's going to be a lot of government spend in each of these areas in the emerging economies. From an ANZ market perspective, typically what is happening is that their contribution to the GDP has been close to around 3%. But by 2018, if you see, next 3 years is going to be critical from an infrastructure growth perspective in these economies. You can see that by 2018 this is expected to touch a peak of 4.5%, and slowly it will start tapering down. This is from a New Zealand perspective. From an Australia perspective, this was only a decade ago they were contributing under 2% to the GDP. Engineering construction continued to be a prime focus area in Australian market. But by the end of 2012, this 2% has grown significantly to up and over 7.1%. This again would continue to taper down, and by 2020 you find a kind of equilibrium getting attained. Now from a trends and challenges perspective in this industry, so what are the trends that are happening in this? From a market perspective, what we are seeing is that there is a lot of focus that is happening on the energy production and distribution area, specifically on the distribution side of this. For example, if you take Africa, if you still see half of Africa is still considered as a dark continent, and there's a lot of focus, a lot of players getting into Africa space, trying to get energy distributed in each of these areas. The other area where we are seeing that the capacity with the technology advancements has tremendously increased. Today we are talking of power plants with terabytes capacity. These are generally the norm. They have moved up significantly because with the back end technology supporting them, these power plants are easy to build and easy to manage. More importantly, there is a lot of focus on the renewables energy aspects. So there's a lot of interest and a lot of investments that are happening in the renewables energy growth. Typically, when we say renewables energy, typically this would be in wind, this could be in solar, this could be biofuel, and most of these are considered as clean energies. The percentage number of companies in clean energy space has increased tremendously. There's a lot of capital investments that is happening in this space. If I could quote you some numbers, the kind of growth that renewables energy has seen in India, it was something around 1%. This has grown to 12% at the beginning of the 12th financial year plan, and by 2017, when the 12th financial year plan is expected, this is able this is expected to touch close to 19%. So that is the kind of growth that is expected. So you can also imagine the kind of the focus and spend that is going to happen in this space. While we say that there's a lot of awareness that is coming in terms of being environment friendly, reducing the carbon footprint and emissions. So there are a lot of environmental norms and regulations by various forums that needs to be maintained. So this is also posing a different kind of not only a threat to the market in terms of being compliant and regulatory compliant with most of these compliance agencies, but it is also opening up newer avenues for business. For example, like environmental engineering, you will find today a lot of demand is there for environmental engineering and air pollution control systems. This means that there are a lot of players who have come up in consulting, providing consulting and services in this space. From a business perspective, what is happening is, well, I said that you already have a set of established players. You also see the entry of global players in emerging economies. This means that the entire business model has got disrupted. There is nothing like home turf anymore. So today, a player in India has to compete with the likes of a global player. This means the kind of the capabilities and expertise that these people need to have. I mean, it brings in a completely different kind of investment and thinking and thought process that needs to happen in this industry space. But it also presents a lot of opportunities because many of these countries are still regulated by some of these local compliances. So these people can join hands with some of these global players, so that these global players can bring in the kind of required expertise around handling complex projects, handling complex project management aspects, bringing in the required best practices. So one side you see competition coming in because of this advent of these global players, but you can also see opportunity coming in as well. From an environment perspective, we see that more and more policies and frameworks that are happening are becoming more business friendly. For example, like in India with this Make in India campaigning, the businesses are trying, the government is trying to woo the businesses with more attractive shops laid out to each of these players. So it has become more business friendly, the environment overall. Some of the key players, when you're talking of global players who are coming, you have the likes of Samsung, you have the likes of Bechtel, UEM. For example, like today, some of these expressways in Chennai, they are actually built and managed by the global players from Malaysia. So that is the kind of change that is happening in this industry. With this kind of change, what is also happening is that we are seeing a lot of interchanging of roles that is happening in this EPC space. So typically, when you talk of EPC, it was talked of EPC plus PM, wherein the project management was typically kept outside this EPC, though it was a core component of EPC. But with all these changes happening on the business front, the role diversification has started happening, and now you see that integration of project management or PMC is happening with EPC. From a technology perspective, with a lot of changes happening on the technology front, you find a lot of fit for purpose solutions that has come in. You also have strong integration engines that has come in, so that the customers are no longer bound by any the limitations or restrictions on the integration front. And you also have something called connected stakeholders, which means that from the total ecosystem can completely be connected by a common platform, and today the businesses can span across multiple applications. What it also means that there are a lot of technology enablers that have come in, but at the same time, while they bring in tremendous value to the business in terms of bringing in the required capabilities to meet the business needs, as well as being futuristic in the sense that bringing in the disruptive technologies of cloud, as well as bringing in the cognitive abilities into the solution. They are very, very disruptive in nature. So the businesses needs to align themselves to adapt to these disruptive technologies. The role of IT has also been constantly changing in this whole game now. Initially, when you see IT was more of an enabler, and there was always typically, you see a distinct lag between, IT support and the business support. Business always needs to continue to move faster, while there was a lag, in IT catching up with the business. But today, what is happening is that, we see IT as being the driving force behind these businesses, and IT has moved from a more enabler role to a more strategic role in enabling these businesses. What has also happened is with the reduction in costs of this technology, this has also contributed in a big way in influencing the EPC IT spends. Today you see that the processing power or the computing power has grown tremendously. Today you have seen that from a technology networking perspective, you have wireless and data connectivity is no longer an issue. You have mobility, you have cloud solutions, you have much cheaper hardware and storage solutions. So all these have contributed in a big way in technology, in a big way. So from an industry perspective, what is happening is we are seeing is that typically on an average, companies with revenue sizes of 250 million or so, their IT spend is around 1.6%. Companies who have large enterprises with 10 billion plus upwards of revenue, their IT spend is 1.1%. So that means you see there is a significant IT spend happening in this space. So while we saw the trends that is happening, there are also a lot of challenges specific to this industry segment. So what are those some of these challenges? From a market perspective, see, these projects are all typically needs to be time bound for it to actually make money. So but if you get into larger complex project, there could be potentially a lot of delays. This could be because of land acquisitions, or this could be because of environmental clearances. So these delays has to be identified upfront, so that you have all these approvals in place before we actually get into the project, so that you don't run into project overruns. There are also a lot of regulatory challenges, as I said earlier, because today the environment awareness has taken off in a big way. So there are a lot of restrictions on this front as well. Plus there are also some of these geographies have restrictions on newer players coming in. So that means they have to find local or suitable partners for them to work in some of the geographies. This is primarily from a geopolitical perspective. There can be time overruns on this project. So this also is something that that needs to be managed effectively. You can typically see that the project inflationary cost or the time overruns in happening in most of the larger governmental spend projects. Example, the case in point could be the metro projects that are happening in India. If you see, most of these metro projects are running years behind schedule. So this means that there has been a significant delay in the project, and this delay has not only costed in time overrun, but also budget overrun, as well as the project cost escalation as well. From a business perspective, while the contracting strategy has so far been successful, but what is also throwing light is that unless you have a very good control over the scope of the engagement that you're getting into, you could find that because of that latency errors, if all the aspects of the project has not been captured up front during your front-end engineering design, there could be a potential of newer uncovered areas that might come up during the implementation, and you might find that this could potentially cost you significantly in your project in cost overruns. What is also happening is because of the dynamic nature of businesses, there could be constantly change order request that is coming in. So this would mean that there needs to be a constant review or monitoring mechanism that needs to be in place to have a tighter control over this change request that is coming into the projects. uh, as we see that because of multiple players involved with going into a joint venture or a consortium led projects that are being implemented today, there are multiple stakeholders, multiple parties involved. So that means there is a potential for more conflicts arising in any part of this chain. So that means the businesses also needs to be prepared to manage these disputes, manage these conflicts in an effective way. More importantly, from an audit perspective, there is a lot of audit trails that needs to happen in these businesses. So that means any system that you are using it, because of the nature of the business, which is typically monitored and tracked on a milestone basis. For any milestone, you need to have a complete audit trail that are in place. Financing, obviously finance continues to be a challenge. So whatever finance that has happened, when the financial closes are happened, it has also become of paramount importance that the funds for each of these projects are managed in a very effective way. Last but not the least, what is also happening is that typically most of these government projects, what you see goes on L1 bid. So that means there are tremendous pressures on the players to go low on their cost, which in essence mean that there is a possibility that all cost has not been factored upfront, and during execution phase, because of the aggressive nature of this industry, this competition, if they bid low, there is a potential for a cost overrun. So this is something that the business is grappling with and needs to manage effectively. From a technology perspective, you have that new contractual related technology challenges because of the dynamic operating nature of these businesses. So you go with a defined scope, but during implementation there is a potential that the scope could be changing. So that means your contract should be flexible enough to accommodate these changes. From an ERP footprint, there also needs to be constant footprint of the ERP should allow it to handle all these changes dynamically. From a technology perspective, what is also happening is that previously you found a lot of systems which are silos. Today you find that with more and more newer technologies coming in up, with the cloud technologies, with a lot of integration capabilities, the technology footprint also needs to be clearly understood and defined upfront. And from an integration perspective, you still find that many of these organizations continue to run on a different procurement system and different finance systems as well. So that means that when you are actually putting in an APC solution in place, you need to make sure that the integration aspects with these two key systems are in place. What it means in terms of resources and the challenges on the resource front. With this kind of wave that is happening in the EPC space, we clearly see that the statistics say that there's going to be a major shortfall of 473,000 project managers and engineers. This is going to be a major crunch area. Similarly, if you look at other skills that are needed in the industry, a foreman or technician or supervisors, there is going to be major resource crunch. That means the business somehow needs to start working collaboratively with either the institutes which churn out these people, or skill building, or skill enhancements, or cross skilling or upskilling initiatives, so that they will be able to meet this skill crunch. In terms of statistics of the EPC projects, some of the larger projects, typically what we have, the statistics say that 40% of these projects exceed allocated budget, and these are for various reasons that we see because of the challenges or the very nature of the industry. In terms of cycle time overrun, almost 10% of these projects goes through a cycle time overrun. So now we have seen the typical issues and challenges that are confronting these industries. I just want to take a pause for a minute and see if there are any queries. What we will do is that if there are any queries, we will try and address this within this session. In case we are not able to address this, we will definitely follow through and come back to the responses. So if you have any queries and the challenges and the trends, please raise it. Okay, thank you. So from a solution perspective, typically what we have been seeing is that EPC industry needs and challenges are completely different. But you don't find too many solutions that fit the shoe or fit the purpose from an EPC industry perspective. So what happens is many of these businesses tend to adopt a solution that is available ready in the market and try to use them. These are becoming kind of a force fit solutions, more ERP centric solutions, but EPC industry is more from a process centric. So a product centric, a manufacturing centric solution definitely was not going to fit a EPC segment because the needs of these industries are different. What kind of a need typically this industry has? As we saw earlier that contracting is in thing in this industry. It's a very nature of this industry. So that means you need to have complete track of what a contractor is doing it. So if you don't have a tracking or visibility into what the contractor is doing, then you are likely to run into issues. Procurement aspects. Typically, some of these larger players, you find that they'll be running multiple projects. What is the essence of these projects is that if you are able to aggregate it into a constant overall procurement engine and making sure that all the materials that are needed across these projects are ordered on a contract basis or a rate contract basis, you will be able to leverage from the scale of operations significantly on the cost that you spend for each of the materials that you procurement. So if you don't have tighter control over procurement, if you don't have control over procurement of material that are used across the projects, you are likely to run into cost issues. There are a lot of costs that are hidden costs which are typically not captured. You could be a lot of travels that happens in a project. There could be a lot of indirect resources or labor that are getting involved. So unless you have a good solution that effectively helps you to manage this cost and get this allocated, you are going to again not get complete visibility on the spend for a project. Most importantly, how do I monitor and know what is the stage of my project, my current project in? So that means you need to have a good project management solution that tells you that today this is the project and this is my current state of my project, and you should be able to see whether the project is in status, whether it is on track, on time, or there are going to be some WMS or activities that are overrun, so that your attention can be on those activities and quickly bring them up to speed. The accounting process for an EPC industry is slightly different from a manufacturing industry. So typically what you call it as RA bill, which is the running accounting bill, it is not a simple task, because for a project that could run several years and span over multiple years, you need to have an accounting procedure so that every record of payment where it has been made during the life cycle of the project or adjustments made, all needs to be visible. And if you don't have that kind of a track and visibility, there is every possibility that you have no control over the project and there's going to be a project overrun and cost overrun. So now we understood that what is the typical challenges. Now how do the Ramco solution meet or address these challenges? First and foremost, EPC, as I said, is different from a manufacturing industry. So when you're looking at an EPC solution, real-time project management capabilities, site inventory, and integrated with finance and HR and costing is a key to this industry. So from a Ramco perspective, our solution offers all this. It's an integrated ERP. Payments. Again, from an EPC industry perspective, the whole project is tracked on a milestone based. So that means the system should be capable of tracking your milestones every time, and also tracking in the on-time performance of these milestones, and making sure that your payments and spends are all aligned to these milestones. Indirect costs. There could be a lot of indirect costs that are happening in a project. So that means tracking of the cost needs to be very, very effective, and this needs to be tracked on a constant basis. This in effect means that you need to have complete visibility on a project profitability, progress of a project. So I mean every project, if there is going to be a schedule slippage, or if there is going to be an effort to overrun, I mean you need to have the required alerts and triggers for it, so that you get visibility upfront, so that necessary action or corrective mechanisms can be put in place. So this means that you need to have a robust workflow engine also built into the system. This triggers and alerts need not be on a reactive basis. If it is on a proactive basis, this will help you to get early visibility or insight into the project schedules and overruns, and so that you could put in place a quicker corrective action. Budget tracking. So every project comes out with a real planned budget. So your actual trackings against the spend for all these projects becomes very important. Uh, Most important aspect of this industry is that uh, typically the industry goes with some of the best of breed solutions from a project planning and project scheduling perspective. So the most commonly used tools are your Primavera and MS project. So that means the ERP solution or the EPC solution that you're looking place should have very strong integration capabilities with the MS projects and Primavera. uh, Contract job management. So if you are going to subcontract it, that means your product should have the capability to subcontract and manage the subcontract, track the subcontract from an activities progress that happens for each of the subcontracting activities, as well as the payments that are linked to subcontract. This is our typical overall solution map. If you see, our project management is core to this whole solution. So everything from an EPC industry is driven from a project-centric approach, and from our solution footprint, you find that our product primarily the EPC solutions are driven from a project management perspective. Along with project management, you also have your other aspects of this industry like procurement and site inventory. And some cases you could also have small manufacturing pieces that comes in as part of because some of the larger players tend to do a little bit of manufacturing themselves. And in case once you do a construction, if you want to get into the maintenance aspects of a building or the assets that you take it, we also have a full-blown enterprise asset management solution as well. This is again integrated with a back-end finance accounting and a HCM solution. So together it gives a comprehensive suite. Now, from an EPC industry perspective, one of the key drivers that drives this industry is how do I alleviate my time and cost overruns. This means that I need to have complete control and visibility of every project, what is happening in each of these projects, so that I will be able to manage this project, monitor this project more closely, and manage it more effectively. So what does our solution offer is a dashboard for managing a complete project. So this is a simple interface where which is very simple to use, and in one screen you will be able to get a snapshot of all the projects, and also the quick status of each of these projects. You see that some of these are marked in red, green. You also see that from an overall project perspective where this project stands. Is there a schedule overrun, is there a cost overrun, is there effort overrun, or is there going to be overall profitability impact. So that means the moment I see there are some reds in this, I know that I need to quickly swing into action and start taking some corrective measures for this. So in one place you will be able to manage all your projects very effectively. So this is the dashboard from a project management perspective. So each of these projects comes out with a detailed color coded with various attributes, and you can define what is that parameters that is going to make this project schedule. Let's say it's going to be green or red or amber. Similarly, you could define from a cost perspective, from a profitability perspective, from an effort perspective. And you also have embedded analytics or infographics. So I mean, you also have enhanced visualization features as well. So each of this is going to help you to monitor the project, see where your spend is happening, where the issues are, and will be able to help you quickly take some action over it. This brings in better control over your projects. One we saw from a project perspective. The second aspect which is critical to this industry is how do I effectively utilize the resources. While utilization comes little lower in the game, there are also specific inputs or insights which will be very helpful from a business perspective to take the right decisions. For example, like procurement versus manufacturing. If I have the right kind of statistics or profitabilities around some of the materials which I procure versus when I tend to manufacture, then my business will be able to take a decision for a specific item. Should I really procure, because if my in-house manufacturing costs are going to be high vis-a-vis if I'm going to procure it from outside. So that means your business strategy itself could completely change. Similarly, another important area which with a solution like Ramco, which will help you to take a strategic business decision, is that lease versus buy. So for example, like if I'm in a construction industry, I'm like, for example, like I'm taking I'm getting into roads construction. I would need a lot of capital intensive equipments to do this project. So while my core expertise is in building this infrastructure, but I would need a lot of equipments for me to actually complete this project. So does it make sense for me to buy some of these large equipments, or does it make sense for me to lease? So that means your buy versus lease becomes a major decision point in such kind of a projects. So with a solution like Ramco, you'll be able to clearly identify that whether should I really go ahead with the buy or should I go ahead with the lease. Because if I'm not going to get another project for the next couple of years in the same space, it would make better business sense for me to rather go ahead and lease than go buy these equipments. So these are some of the effective tools and solutions that we offer for you to take a business call or a business decision. So from an effective utilization of resource perspective, again you also have something called as S curve. So again this is a quick infographic stats which showcase that the resource utilization, and you get details of all the consumption, your planned quantities, your bill of quantities enlisted alongside. So you get a complete visibility on what is actual planned and what is actual achieved, and also percentage progresses in each of these. So that means we are saying that you have complete control of two of the major aspects of an EPC industry. One is on the projects, the other one is effective utilization of the resources. Just going through quickly some of the samples from a reporting perspective, because reporting is one of the key needs of this industry. So I would for example need to know what is my current billing status. So you have a standard report in the solution that will help you to quickly get a feel of what is all your billing status. Then a project status. So each of these project you'll be able to know what is that project indicator, what is the planned start date of the project, what is the planned end date, what is the current status of the project, what is the current kind of expenses that has incurred, the effort that has gone into this project. So all this you'll be able to get nutshell in a simple report. Profitability. Obviously, any project that we do, we need to make profitable. So that means we also have a standard report, that will help you quickly get, insights on your profitability. So if there are going to be some issues where you find that there are some projects that are not running profitable, you will be able to drill down back into the aspects of the project, detailed aspects of the project, and clearly see where the issues are from, and find a solution to those issues. In addition to this, we also have a standard report scheduling engine, which would help you to do a batch scheduling of some of the critical reports that you need. It could be done on a periodic basis. We have close to around 18 to 20 industry specific pre-built reports. This is over and above the set of standard reports that we have in the system. How are you doing on time?
20 more minutes.
Okay. Okay.
Another 5 minutes we can finish up and start.
Done. Okay. The last key driver for this industry is fund management. So all these project industries typically they do a financial closure first, so that they make sure that the required funding for the project is available. Once this funding for the project is available, it becomes very, very important for them to effectively manage the cash flow or the fund flow, so that the project schedules and milestones are met. From a Ramco perspective, we have realized the significance and importance of this, and what we are trying to help our prospects and customers is with that in terms of how can you effectively manage your cash flow or fund flow from a simple single screen that will be help you to manage and monitor and track all your payments that needs to happen, or the collections that needs to happen. So we bring in the concept of what you call it as the hub. So from a finance perspective, we have both the payment hub as well as the receivables hub. So what does this hub does is that in a simple way you will be able to manage all aspects of your payment in a single screen. I will also show some examples of this. What it does is that it crunches multiple activities, multiple tasks, and multiple navigations that you need to do to get into the payment from a single page. from an invoice perspective, for example, you will be able to manage and monitor and track all your invoices from one place. So that means not only I have a complete list of my to do from an invoicing perspective, I would also be able to track what are all the invoices, what is the status of each of these invoices. On the left hand side, you see that you have some red, green, and amber signals. So that means there are some invoices which that they are overdue. That there are some invoices that has gone into an aging bucket that needs immediate attention. There are some invoices that still you have time for you to pay. So that means you'll be effectively able to manage your cash flow and funds more effectively. Not only that, what it also does is that the ease of operation comes into play here. So if there are a bunch of invoices that that can be processed because it has met all your parameters, instead of trying to manage and go through a individual invoice processing, you will be able to do a bulk processing of each of these invoices. And for each of the invoices, if you want to get into the details, the same screen and the bottom of the screen, you will be able to find the relevant details in terms of these invoices. And in case you want to navigate into additional details that are relevant for this invoice that you want to do, you'll be able to, without jumping out of the screen, you'll be able to do all this. And in case you want to create a new invoices on the fly also, you'll be able to do it from a single screen. So that means from a single screen, which is a very, very powerful screen, you'll be able to do all this. Receivables again is very, very important because you will have to make sure that your collections all happen on time. So this in essence mean typically if you could draw in a manufacturing industry parallel, something like DSO. If I'm able to reduce my DSO by a couple of days, so that means I would have brought in a tremendous impact into my cash flow management. So with this kind of your cash receivables management central tool, you will be able to define such kind of KPIs, and not only define that KPIs but also manage and monitor and adhere to those KPIs. Yeah.
15 more minutes.
That's okay. So now, in addition to these features, what also happens is today's business world, you see that not only in terms of connected enterprises, but people are constantly on the move, and businesses cannot suffer because people are on the move. So we have realized this, and we have recognized this as well. So what we have also done is that we have brought in solutions that while people are on the move, you will be still be able to do some of your critical business functions from your mobiles. It could be a simple procurement process that you want to do on a mobile, or any approvals that needs to happen, or you will be also be able to do a tracking of your projects on a mobile. So that means your businesses no longer suffer if you're constantly on the move. All you need is to have a connectivity, and you will be able to still get a feel of your businesses or feel of your projects that are happening. And any urgent procurements or any urgent approval that also needs to happen can also be done through this. Now, having said all this, we have addressed all the core business issues and challenges, and how Ramco can help you. Now, coming to the last aspect of this is that from a technology perspective. So, technology obviously is not the strength of these EPC players, because their core competency is lies in their core businesses in terms of running large scale projects, running complex projects, creating the required infrastructure. So what we are saying is that while the EPC players continue to remain focused on their core functions, uh, we at Ramco will be able to help you handle all your technology changes that are happening. So this is something similar to like today the whole world is getting into the digital business. So if you want to reimagine yourself as a digital enterprise, Ramco can help you become one. So we have moved into an era of cognitive and adaptive solutions. Typically, what was happening is your solutions earlier are all primarily system of records. So from system of records, they started graduating into a little bit of analytics that started coming in. But today's era, we started that there's a lot of intelligence that needs to be built into the system, a lot of cognitive abilities that needs to happen into the system, and with Internet of Things coming in, the solution that you pick should be progressive and also futuristic. So at Ramco, if you see, all our solutions are all aligned to this revolution. So simply what we are doing is now, we already seen the concept of hubs. What we are also seeing is that, we are bringing in a lot of features and functionalities that you could manage through emails. So that means, your users need not worry too much about the businesses. You could, transact your businesses through simple emails. This essence means that, we are moving to the concepts of zero user interfaces. Mails. So today, if you really see, we have all become slaves to emails in our businesses. Our emails literally decide what we do at the beginning of the day, start of the day, what our work is for the day is that. So from Ramco, what we have recognized this importance of this, and what we are doing is now, we are enabling more and more transactions to work on an email. So if you want to do a simple procurement, or if you want to do a small, leave, or if you want to do a small work package status, what is, let's say, current status of my project, all this, you need not actually log into a system. You will be able to do it outside the system. All you need is to just a simple email query, and the system will do all this for you, and send a reply to an email saying that these are the details. Here is an example, like for a simple procurement. So this all goes by keyword recognition. So all you need to do is, if you want to procure a small part, you just need to key in, for basic information that is needed for the system to understand. And once this information goes in, the system is intelligent enough to understand, and then automatically creates a purchase order, and you will get the feedback in your email box with immediately saying that the required procurement has happened. You can also check the status of some of your procurement aspects as well. Mobility, we already saw some of the mobile features which are specific to project management and procurement. What we are also moving towards is the concept of Genie. This is something like today's era of a fast food world. If you can already have a pre-cooked food, why do you want to actually spend a lot of time preparing for the food? You just pick this up, just heat it and start using it. So this is primarily the premise on which the whole Genie has been built. So over a period of time, what we are saying is that system, we are trying to build in self-learning capabilities into the system, so that the system can start recognizing the user patterns, as well as the buying patterns. For example, if it is going to be on a procurement side, then the system will start doing some of these functions itself, and it will start suggesting you the right recommendations. It is up to the user to either accept these recommendations, or the user can still go do a manual intervention and go ahead and complete this transaction processing. But over a period of time, with enough data in the system, the system will start throwing in more and more accurate information. Quickly to go through some of our credentials in this space. These are some of our customers. DLF obviously is one of the biggest players in India. Inksol is again a bigger player in in the Middle East. BL Harbert is from. So we have good expertise and experience in having delivered these solutions to some of our larger customers and across the globe. I also have a couple of client testimonials videos, but if time permits, probably I'll play it at the end. BL Harbert, actually, many of us utilize the services without really knowing that, the services come from BL Harbert. Actually, they are one of the, respected builders of embassies across the globe. All the US embassies across the globe, they are actually built and maintained by them. So they actually use our, Ramco solution. It's an integrated, procurement solution, which is implemented across, multiple countries. Earlier it was completely in a manual system with a very low level of automation, so they were not able to get accurate information, or there were a lot of inaccuracies in terms of the information available at the site and as well as the central warehouse. So they went ahead with our Ramco solution in terms of bringing the entire procurement engine into our solution. Want of time, I'm quickly going through this. DLF again, is one of the big time, real estate and infra players in this space in India. In fact, they are one of our players who actually use a complete suite of solution, right from finance to procurement to the core operations of construction, leasing, billing, to asset management, as well as mall management. So they are into every space of the businesses. Just to quickly give you a feel of the scale and complexity of this involved in the DLF. you have close to around, with our solution, they manage, 750 plus companies within India. And they have close to around 2,400 plus finance books and 4,000 plus users. And typically, if you see annually, the kind of the requisitions, purchasing statistics that goes out, is order of few 10,000s. Purchase orders is close to 30,000. Number of goods received happen is close to 25,000. So I mean, the volumes are humongous. So that means they need to have a system that will help them effectively manage their procurement as well as spend. And so far for the last several years they have been successfully using our system. Toshiba again, it's a recent project that we have successfully gone live. This is for their wholly owned subsidiary in India. In terms of they're doing an infrastructure, TPSC is a subsidiary in India, and they're using a solution for construction of power plants. For shortage of time, actually, I'm concluding the session here and open for some questions.
Thanks, Mahesh. We have few questions that have already come in. So to begin with, start with question from Mr. Vikas Khare.
Yeah.
When you were running through the slides, when you were saying mentioning about the problems in the EPC industry,
Okay.
you mentioned a point saying that the progress of the project isn't monitored properly.
Right.
So can you elaborate on that point?
Sure. Okay. See, from an EPC industry perspective, project is central to everything. So that means, I need to have a complete visibility and control over my project. So any project that I do, I need to break it down into, work breakdown structure, into the activities of the project. And, every activities I should be able to monitor and effectively control from a system perspective. This is from a project perspective. So if you really need to have control over the project, that means, you need to define the project, define the activities and monitor each of these activities. So that is the level of depth or detail that you need to do from a project, planning and scheduling perspective. And from a project profitability perspective, that means, every spend that happens for each of these activities, the effort that goes into, each of these activities, as well as the other cost, which could be direct as well as indirect cost that goes also needs to be tracked and monitored.
Okay. Thanks, Mahesh. The next question is from Mr. Ashish Sharma. He wants to know that infra industry is large but very unorganized on systems.
Right.
How do you convince them for ERP? He wants to know what is the the
Right.
selling point that
Correct. See, that's what actually, primarily you may have to play around these three key points that are, very, very specific and, important to this industry perspective. One is, with the system, we should be able to harp on the point that, we will be effectively able to alleviate, your time and cost overruns. The second aspect is, you'll be able to plan and, effectively utilize your resources. Three is, from a strategy perspective, with the required inputs and insights from the system, you'll be able to take the right business decisions. And the fourth point to me is again around, effective utilization of the funds. So if you're able to bring in, all the key aspects and value proposition is built around these 3-4 areas, I think, the customer should get convinced.
The next question is from Sudhanshu Mishra. He wants to know what are the different roles, user roles that are available? Is there a dashboard for contractor? What kind of notification the system has that is built in? Does it also send a notification to supplier about non-availability of materials?
Yes. So typically, if you're looking at required, alerts or notification that needs to go out of this engine, we have our, well-built workflow engine. So this workflow engine is not only internal to the system, who is going to use the systems. If you want to enable this across the, business process management into your vendor community or a supplier community as well, you can extend these alerts and notifications into them as well.
So the next question is from Mr. Prasad Sam. He wants to know, can Ramco EPC solution replace Microsoft Project and Primavera, or does it integrate with the project management softwares?
Okay, good question. So typically what we have seen is that, the industry tends to, adopt Primavera or Microsoft Project as a, planning and scheduling solution. So while we have, some components of this, But given the nature and complexity of these two functions, we would generally advise to integrate to Primavera or a Microsoft or a project planning tool.
Okay. He has a follow-up question. He's saying EPC industry is focused on project design and construction phase of the project.
Right.
How is the maintenance module relevant to EPC?
See, some of these players, for example, like I quoted a DLF, right? After this construction, they also lease out this properties or assets, and some of them get into a different business group within the same organization gets into the asset maintenance aspects as well. So in such cases, they also look at a building maintenance system or an asset management solution.
So Dheeraj wants to know if you have implemented a solution for any large oil, gas, or chemical project.
I think we will come back to you on that.
We'll come back to you separately on that to you. Also, the next question is, does a product have inbuilt analytics and intelligence which will give insight on how to take care of costs, schedule overruns?
Yes, the product has some of the transactional analytics is also inbuilt into the product, as like I showed you, some of the areas like project management workspace or a dashboard that we have, you'll be able to clearly define some of the framework that from a project perspective I need to effectively understand that whether it's going to be a cost overrun or a schedule overrun, profitability, all that we'll be able to define and monitor that. So to that extent we can define some of these analytics. But if you're looking for a full-blown analytics solution, then on top of this we also need to bring in the analytics engine.
Okay, thanks Mahesh. Vikas, to his previous question, he has a follow-up. You said you explained why projects are not tracked properly. He also wants to know why, accounting isn't also properly done, is a point that you have raised. So can you elaborate on that?
Accounting.
Accounting,
I was trying to say that from a project management perspective, the accounting of this industry is slightly different in the sense is that these projects tend to span across multiple years. It is not like a manufacturing industry where you have a defined financial year and all your closures happen within that year. So and this industry also the entire accounting happens typically on a milestone. So that means for a given milestone, all your tracking needs to happen on a milestone base. That means your payments also needs to be linked to this one. So that means your running accounting bill, what you typically is used as a parlance in this industry, should be comprehensive enough for you to ensure that all the payments, all the adjustments that has happened from a project are captured.
Okay, the next question is from Prasad again. He wants to know what is the collaborative aspect that has been built into the solution. What is the collaboration that you can offer between the EPC main contractor and subcontractors, sub-vendors, for example?
See, collaboration aspect again, it is only the question of, you want to setting up the system, if you want the subcontractors also, to use the system. That is from an overall, if you want to have complete control and tracking of the subcontractor activities also, you'll be able to do it from the system. That is from a project, execution perspective. If you do not want to get into that level of depth of the details, what you can also do is that, from a vendor or supplier perspective, the collaborative tool we have is in terms of the portal. So if you are going to raise a procurement request, if the items are all already dispatched, they'll be able to update it into the supplier portal. You can extend the access into the supplier portal. So it is up to us from a design perspective, what kind of collaboration you want. The system inherently has the capabilities to extend the collaboration to the subcontractor chain.
Okay, Mahesh. So I'm taking the final question. So do we have AutoCAD integration for BOQ calculation? As because many construction and architects prefer this internet.
Right. See, I think yes, that is a good question actually, because typically the input design aspect needs to come from an a design engine, which could be an AutoCAD in most of the cases. So from our perspective, we have the capabilities to to integrate into AutoCAD, and we also have kind of proof of concept that is already ready.
Okay. So that's the last question that we have taken. So thank you so much, Mahesh, for this very good presentation. I hope everybody enjoyed. You can keep sending us the questions. We will take this offline. So any questions that you have, you can send it to contact@ramco.com, or you can send it to vinitaramani@ramco.com. We'll take this question and we'll get Mahesh's answer to you through mail. So thank you very much for joining us on this webinar. Appreciate your time. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks, Mahesh.
Thank you all.